2, 1.
Yeah, buddy.
That was better.
That was a good clap.
You guys missed it. we had a technical difficulty, and I had a technical difficulty with my clap even, believe it or not.
It was a weak-ass clap.
But we're back. I'm going to say hi again.
Hi, Namir.
Nice seeing you.
It's been a while.
A couple of days.
Wow, it feels like a deja vu.
It does.
It does. More importantly,
Khaled is here. Khaled Lababidi is here.
What's going on, guys?
Thanks for joining
How you doing, bro?
us.
How are you?
Good, man.
Good, man.
We're saying, as we had our whole interaction problems and all that, we haven't seen you in a while, man. How's things going? A lot has changed.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Lots of things have changed on my side. I guess the last couple of months have been really crazy on the Corona side. When we first talked, we said, we're going to get together in June, and that was like 2 months ago.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, by then, Corona would have been finished. I thought we'd been over it.
We'd be living the high life.
Was saying, that the heat was going to kill it off.
Yeah,
but absolutely not. Absolutely not.
Even we could have used some Clorox to get rid of it as well. That didn't happen either.
Were you one of the heat people? Were you subscribing to that?
In theory, it kind of makes sense. Before COVID, if I told you a virus cannot live for a long period of time in extreme heat,
no, but it's not
plausible.
But no, we had that. Like, remember, we had the whole conversation. Sorry, we're gonna do a COVID thing quickly, but we had the whole conversation. We're saying that it can't be killed in a sauna. It can't be killed in
Corona can't. COVID can't. I'm saying before Corona. If I came and told you,
the assumption was okay. Yeah,
heat kills germs, right?
Makes sense.
But yeah, that's obviously not the case.
Okay. Enough of that.
Corona, go.
Enough of that. Let's get into this. So, Khaled, man, you've done quite a bit of different things throughout your life. You used to be a corporate man.
Yeah.
And you did what a lot of people try to do in their lives, which is to break the shackles of corporate life.
Yeah.
And you were in banking for BNP, HSBC, Abu Dhabi.
Yeah. So for a long time, I think I started my banking career in 2008. And I was with BNP Paribas in Canada. Then they moved me over to Bahrain, which is where we got to connect once again.
Yeah.
And then I got a chance to go to a local bank, National Bank of Abu Dhabi.
Nice.
Stayed there for a couple of years, and then HSBC. So I think I was in banking in total for about 13 years. And
you don't miss it?
I loved banking at the beginning. Banking was, super exciting, especially at the beginning. You're young, you're learning, you're doing all these deals. You kind of go into these closing parties.
Yeah.
Lots of action that's happening. And you get to change countries. You get to do lots of different, corporates. And I think what I always loved was, the variety of banking, and that was really great.
It's very interesting that you look at it that way. From my side, I'm more on the technical side. And when you talk banking and financial and I'm not an expert, right? So for me, I look at it and say, and I don't see the excitement in it. So it seems almost stale, but it's funny how you have a certain view on certain things. And then when you talk to somebody that has a passion about it, who's been in it, and they see how exciting it can be for them.
Yeah.
He's champagne popping for lunchtime and caviar eating.
He's one of those.
Yeah,
those
for sure. Closing $1 billion deals. So
I can see how that could be exciting.
Yeah, I don't know. I was reading somewhere. I don't know how accurate it is. I know the internet sometimes like to blow things up a bit, but they were saying that you've been involved in some $30 billion worth of capital raising. Is that a proper terminology?
Look, in banking, when you're, I used to be specifically an oil and gas banker. And so with those guys, you're really looking at deals that are always in, the $500 million range, 700 million, working with guys like Aramco and KPC and things like that. And those guys don't do small deals. So when you go out and you're helping these companies raise money, you can get to, 20, 30 billion dollars, quite easily actually.
Wow.
And so those numbers, are, those are the things that come with, the interesting times with the interesting people and, the interesting places where you close the, transactions. It was really, really a lot of fun.
Crazy numbers
for a long time.
And that's why we eat craft dinner. And he's eating like sushi.
He puts caviar on his craft dinner.
Nobu. Right? But so raising funds in that corporate setting, you slowly kind of moved away from that. you got involved in the startup space a bit,
Yeah.
right? I'm giving people just a summary of your life and your working life to kind of establish a little bit of authority, because I don't want the people to click away, be like, who's he talking to? So this is what I'm doing. I just want to walk you through it.
Okay.
So yeah, you got involved in incubator startups, and then now, and you did a lot of that within the fintech space.
Right.
Correct.
Right. So let me kind of give you like the overview of it. So yeah, so spent a lot of time in banking, and then I think I got to a point where I said, I'm really looking for some new sort of challenge. And I have to say, it was kind of like the last 2 years in banking that I was really, looking for this new challenge. And it's really tough to get out of something that you've been in for such a long time. And because it's got this nice stigma to it. There's lots of differentiation that you get. But at some point, you got to step back and say, is this what I want to do for the rest of my life? And so, it took a lot of time and effort to kind of go through that process. I'm not going to lie. I mean, you go through career coaching and you kind of ask yourself, some of these deep questions.
Did you formally go through career coaching?
I formally went through career coaching. So I hired somebody and we went through a career coaching, and we understood, what are the things that I love to do?
Yeah.
And, tried to kind of map those towards what I was doing currently and why, maybe I wasn't feeling as fulfilled as I wanted to.
It's a smart move.
I think, look, a lot of people, it's not something, unique to individuals. I think a lot of people in the corporate structure trying to find a purpose,
right.
I think, just in general, because it gets kind of, you lose track of what you're doing and why you're doing it. It just becomes a numbers game. You get kind of bogged into this giant machine, and you're just trying to discover yourself and say, like, is this really what I want to do? Is this just all about the numbers? And I think it's such an interesting story, because a lot of people are kind of suffering through that and would, want to hear that experience. You know what I mean? And you did a lot of interesting things, right? So I didn't know about the career coaching. You did it here in Dubai, I'm assuming?
I did it here in Dubai. So my wife is... she's done coaching, for a little while as well. And so she's the one who kind of, pushed me towards doing it. But yeah, doing it, getting that career coaching is one thing, hearing, what it is that you want to do is one thing, but actually acting upon it is really the harder thing to do. To actually walk in one day and tell your boss, you say, I want to walk away from, what I've been building for the last 13 years is really a challenging thing to do. And I think for me, what actually happened was that, my daughter was born, maybe like a month or two before I actually decided to quit. And I said to myself, do I really want? Yeah, exactly. Wow. Yeah. And I said, do I really want, to kind of be that guy that comes home on a daily basis, really upset and disgruntled? And I didn't want to be that guy for my daughter. Luckily my wife and I, we talked about it, and we, you got to plan these things out for sure.
Of course.
But, I took some time off, trying to understand, what it is I wanted to do. I went back, I got my MBA.
Yeah.
So lots of learning that was happening over those 6 months. And then you kind of put yourself into enough positions where things will happen to you.
Of course.
And things do happen. So I got into, I just happened to meet a guy named VJ who's running Techstars, which is really all about, startup incubation.
Mm-hmm.
And genuinely, when somebody said startup to me, 2 years ago, I would be like, what are you talking about? What is this thing called a startup?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, it was a great, 6 months that I spent with Techstars. And I'm going to tell you, I mean, the salary that I got was probably equivalent to the salary that I got my first year out of university in 2013.
Unbelievable.
If not less.
It's probably your lunch expense, right? At the heyday of Khaled, it was like, I used to spend that on a big lunch celebrating a big deal, right? Wow. Okay.
So yeah. So I mean, you really got to go through that kind of process, and you got to push through it, and I pushed through it for 6 months. But again, you put yourself out there enough, you generally, want to be there to learn, you generally want to be there to help out. I learned a lot, from that place. And that just, kind of catapulted me to my next experience and to my next experience. And then ultimately I ended up where I wanted to be, which was, to be at a VC, at a venture capital company.
Yeah.
Looking at startups.
And this is it. Walk us through this, because I think a lot of people understand even myself included, like I have a very basic idea of what a venture capitalist is. They're investors. They come in, pump money into new ideas across all different sorts of industries, depending on which they specialize in. I think everyone has that image of the Facebooks and the Google. I think most people, when they think of VC, Silicon Valley, that whole image starts playing out in people's minds. But what is it like? How is it like private equity? What's the difference between private equity firms and VCs? Explain, man. Give us a little bit of
layman's.
Yeah,
simplify. Sure. Keep it easy for us.
Look, I mean, private equity and VC are both, people who are coming together and investing money. What you usually find with private equity firms is that they're going after established business. So businesses that have been operating for a little while, some private equity firm comes in, they pump a little bit of debt into it. They figure out new ways to, monetize new product lines. They figure out new ways that they can, make more money on the company, maybe grow geographies, etc. And then they'll eventually sell the company.
Yeah.
With VC, it's a little bit different because VC, you're usually talking about, new companies that are being formed. So these are usually like new ideas that are popping up. So yeah, of course, the Facebooks and the Kareems and the Souk.coms, those are all VC-backed types of companies.
Yeah.
Mm.
So somebody who's come up with an idea, they said, I want to tackle a specific part of the market. I'm starting with some seed money. I'm going to grow my business a little bit, add more money into it, continue growing. And then usually it's somewhere in the range of about 7 to 10 years, and they exit out of the company.
The VCs do.
The VCs do.
Well, usually it's the VC and the actual company itself. So if you kind of think about, like, for example, like a Souk.com, they built up their business, for a long time, and then they eventually sold to sold to Amazon.
Amazon.
So how is that different? If I, let's say, have a product or have a new idea, good enough to put out there to the world.
Yeah.
Why should I go with a VC, a private equity, or a bank? Is it the interest? Is it the risk? What's the differentiator from getting a bank loan, traditional way of funding or raising capital, than going with the VC route?
I guess there's kind of two things. Number one is that it's not always that you'll find a bank to give you money for your idea. So if you came to me, call it 10 years ago, and you said, I want to set up an e-commerce site, and this e-commerce site is going to sell to people in the Middle East, I'm not sure how many banks are going to come to you and say, I'm going to back you up.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of the difference. Number one is, can you get that source of capital, or can you not? I think the other thing with the difference between banks and VCs is that VC is because somebody's invested alongside with you. They're there to help you, grow the business as well.
So it's not just the money.
So it's not just the money.
Expertise,
exactly.
networks.
There's expertise, networks,
Yeah.
what they've learned in terms of, previous companies that they've backed, who they can make introductions to, how they can help you figure out, where to go, geographically. Those are all the things that, ideally is what a VC should be bringing to you as well, other than, just capital.
Was it challenging to kind of transform that lens that you had? So obviously you've had the traditional banking, and you said that maybe 10 years ago, you'd have struggled to see the value or see the opportunity or want to engage in such a risk.
Yeah.
Now that you're on the VC side, so now you've come through this other channel, was it hard for you to kind of change the way you look at businesses, or the way that you value businesses or evaluate them? Or
Yeah. So it's definitely hard because it's a complete mind shift that you have to do. So the goal of a bank is always to get your money back. In one way or another, that's the goal of the bank. Never lose any money.
The house always wins.
The house always wins. That's right.
like the casinos, eh?
That's right. But with VCs, the whole point is to help these companies grow so that you can get your money back, in multiples, when they get their money back as well.
Yeah.
So it's a very different type of relationship that you have when you're saying, hey, can we have a chat so that I can talk to you about how to grow your business, versus, hey, can we have a chat so I can figure out, are you going to pay me next month?
Yeah.
And that's a very different kind of thing. And so, you talked about what the challenge is. The challenge is like when you first talk to somebody, you got to change your mindset where you're saying, I'm coming to you as a partner, as opposed to coming to you as, okay, I'm a partner at the beginning, but I really want my money back at the end. Exactly.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah.
That's pretty crazy. That's pretty wild. Like, because I'm kind of trying to take a step back. I've had a little bit of exposure in the world of investment and entrepreneurship. I wouldn't call myself extremely knowledgeable, but I've had some experience in that. On the life cycle of a startup, me and Lay start a business in our garage.
Yeah.
We initially go to our family members and say, yo, dad, yo, mom, yo, sister, yo, brother, hook us up. You raise a few grand. You get moving. You start building some trajectory. We know there's a role of the angels, right? So I think if you can take us through that cycle, I think it'd be really informative, because I think a lot of people kind of miss the point. A lot of people see the back end. They see the big things, the big transactions.
Yeah.
They don't understand the life cycle of a startup as it goes through that. So at what round of the angels, or talk us through the angel setup, and then when the VCs generally come in? Is it round 3, round 4, round 5?
Yeah. Look, I guess you could say the angels are usually in the first round or the first 2 rounds. And then it's usually the VCs that come in. And sometimes you'll find, some of the corporates will come in as well. But, let's kind of start from the beginning. So if the 2 of you guys had an idea and you guys said, I want to prove out this idea. If you didn't have a track record, or if you didn't, really know what the idea is, just yet, or you didn't know if you had, what they call product market fit, then usually you would go to your angels. These are friends and families who kind of put money behind you just because they know, who you guys are as people. And usually what you'll do is you'll build, an MVP, which is a minimum viable product, saying, what it is that you guys are trying to say that you're trying to sell, and can you sell it, using, this minimum viable product that you have. Let's say, give me an idea of, one of the companies that you might want to build, and maybe we can walk through an entire funding round right now.
I kind of wish that we had our next guest on, Marwan, who has his idea, and we're actually going to talk about it when he comes. So what he's developed not necessarily an app, but basically he's connected a QR code to menus in restaurants. So you don't need to download an app. You go in, you scan with your phone, and automatically it uploads the menu, and then it's connected to the point of sale.
Okay.
So right. And they're actually at the startup phase. So they're just starting to raise funds. I think it's an extremely clever idea.
Yeah.
It was something they had already developed, actually funny, it's prior to COVID.
Interesting.
So now it's, but now I think there's so many people kind of running into the space.
Yeah.
It's going to be interesting to see what his strategy is to move forward. But let's take that idea, for example, right?
So his first thing is, he's got to figure out if the actual restaurants want, this product. So he's got to build something that's, just enough to get the restaurants to see it. Sometimes it's just a website. Sometimes it's a small time app, but it takes some money to do that. And so usually he'll go to, friends and family, get that, first, let's call it $100,000. And, he'll run with it. He'll come back to you in a couple of months and he'll give you an update. Look, this is what we built. The restaurants, really loved it. We've spoken to some customers. We've gotten them to use it. This is what we've done right. This is what we've done wrong. And, this is how we're going to take this forward. And we really see that this is going to be, a multi, something kind of business.
Sort of like a proof of concept.
Absolutely. It's absolutely a proof of concept. So once you get past that, then you can start, approaching, some of the VCs, or you can still go to the angels. It's just that at some point, angels don't have enough for you to grow. And it's usually that the angels don't have, let's call it, they don't have enough time for you to give you that time. Or they just don't have the knowledge for you as well.
So, because I'm just trying to think through of how to kind of describe an angel. So an angel would be like more like a gambler, right? So he's hedging his bets on multiple, he's putting, 50, 70, 100 grand across multiple businesses. He can't give you that dedication. He's not coming as a partner truly in the truest sense.
Yeah.
He's just putting a lot of bets out there and hoping that one of them will be 10-fold, 15-fold, and kind of pay back all the other kind of bets that he's taken. Is that a good description of an angel?
I mean, that could be an angel, but usually the angels that you'll usually get is, let's say it's this application that you're talking about. The angel will more than likely be somebody who's already in the restaurant game, or he's in the POS game, and he says, I really think that this is something that's going to work. I wish that I can change this. And hey, you know what? I could probably introduce you to the first, 5-6 restaurants. So usually angels have, some sort of connection to what it is that you are asking them to fund. Now, if you have, the real big high net worth angels, that's a whole different
Obviously,
game. But,
obviously.
but usually it's like the angels are, people who really buy into your idea.
So then what's, again, for sake of definitions, right? When does an angel become a VC, or when does a VC become an angel? Like that line seems now quite blurry.
So I guess the big difference would be is that angel, you're usually using your own money. Yep. When you're a VC, you've gone out, you've raised some capital, and you're investing other people's money. You're investing on behalf of other people's money.
So VCs is a collection of funds from investors and everybody else. But so how does the mode of operation for a VC work? So you take investors' money, right, and you invest it into startups,
correct,
to make your investors' money,
correct.
Yeah. What does that leave you? That there's how did like, yeah, is it a profitable endeavor towards the risk? So obviously you have multiple investments happening at the same time,
right?
And it's all sort of like what Namir was saying, you're hedging your bets. So I heard a stat, something like 3 out of every 4 startups fail, to launch.
So that's the numbers, pretty much right. I mean, the numbers that I've seen are like 78% of companies within the first 5 years go out of business. Yep. So you really are hedging your bets on, those 20 companies. But your first question is, how do VCs make money? It really depends on, what arrangement that you have with the investors behind you. But usually there's, something called the management fee of the amount that you have raised. Mm-hmm. And that kind of is the stuff that, pays for your salaries, for your company, for your employees, for all the overhead that you have. And then there is something that they call a carry. And the carry basically means is that, once you return the money to your investors, there's a certain percentage of it that comes to you. So let's say the carry is, let's call it, 20%. So if you've got a $100 million fund, first thing that happens is, at the end of the 5, 7, 10 years that you decide the end of that fund, you have to return the first 100 million back. Then everything over and above, that 100 million or whatever hurdle rate that you put it to, once you return that back to them, you get to take 20% of the upside.
Of the upside. Okay, interesting.
And
this is all institutional money. Like if I'm a wealthy individual, can I invest into a VC?
Yeah. Absolutely. You can. Yeah. So sometimes you'll get the VCs funding through high net worth individuals. They're looking for different asset classes to go into. So they'll do real estate, they'll do some private equity, and they'll put some stuff into venture. And more, it's starting to happen. I mean, our region is a little bit, kind of new to the entire VC, startup, ecosystem kind of thing. But more and more, you're starting to see it every year.
How many are there established VCs? Like, so there's so many people. I think, look, one of the great things about this region and about the people here is we have very innovative people, right? Yeah. Like we are, by default, I think a lot of people have this. Maybe it's just kind of like the general sense of the population. A lot of people are already starting to think like that. Like, I think the younger generation is much more. Prone to entrepreneurship and wanting to do things on their own. And I think this region kind of is the exaggerated version of that. I know it's new, but how many like established VCs are there? Like for people to know, they can go out, and are they kind of dedicated to different industries? How does that work? Are they just running cross industries?
Yeah. I got to be honest with you. I don't really know the exact number of VCs that are in the region, but I'm going to say it's not in the hundreds. It's probably less than 100. And even of those 100, there's probably, maybe, 2 handsful of, larger VCs that are out there. And those are the ones that, predominantly do most of the funding. The other thing that you have in this region that we're starting to get a little bit more is the corporate VCs. So you have the corporates, and then they realize that, they're being disrupted, and they want into the action of understanding, what's coming up in terms of startups. So people like CCC, the engineering company,
of course, yeah,
they're starting to get into venture as well, because they're trying to see what's happening in the construction space, and they're trying to make sure that 2 things don't happen. Number one is that from their side that they don't get, out innovated.
Yeah.
And then number two is that they want to be there on the upside as well.
It's interesting because when I think of VCs, and I think it has to do with what I'm exposed to, but most of you think it's related to tech.
Yeah.
And I think VCs are gravitated towards that because of the scalability of tech solutions.
Absolutely.
It's something that you can do a POC and roll it out to market quite efficiently.
Yeah, absolutely.
But then when you start talking about construction and different types of industries, how does that decision process change, or how do VCs view those investments? Does it change, or is it the same kind of mentality?
Yeah. So, great question. I mean, it's not easy for VCs to basically sponsor every, idea that comes out. And that's why I think, sometimes, it's more, pertinent that you have the corporate VCs who come out and say, this is something that we support. Because what you'll get as a VC is you'll say, look, there's how can I scale your company, as you said? If you're a pure software company, I mean, borders don't really matter to you at all.
You can just go out there.
Manufacturing doesn't matter to you. Supply chain doesn't matter to you. You're sitting on one AWS, server, and you're selling your product around the world. So whether you sell it in Russia or you sell it in the UAE, it doesn't really matter to you. Once you get into something that has a little bit of hardware into it, that's where it gets, a little bit challenging, and you have to think about it a little bit more as well.
Mm-hmm.
And so sometimes you get VCs who will say, that's not something that I want to get into.
Mm-hmm.
They hear hardware and they say,
that's costs associated,
so many limitations
associated with it. I
Mm.
got to do inventory. I got to finance something. That's something that, I think, VCs have to think about again, because you have to think about it. I mean, hardware could be one of the greatest things for you as well. I mean, let's talk about Apple. I mean, Apple, tech company, great. But, the way that they distribute their product, I mean, yes, there's some stuff that's, online, but the way that they distribute your product is, you have a phone.
Exactly.
It's hardware.
Yeah.
So they're absolutely tied into you. So once you get the phone, you're into the entire Apple ecosystem. And so if you can get past that initial stage of, getting past the hardware process, it could actually be, a really good moat for you in terms of the business, where people can't come into your field.
I think that's where, as Khaled touched, I think that's where the specialized VCs or industry VCs kick in, right? They're already in that space. They're already kind of carrying that load, maybe have the distribution channels, have the manufacturing channels. So it's easy for them to absorb and kind of build
Would
on
you
that.
say they're staying in their lane?
Guys, you see this? We've made it when we've got cups, guys. You know it. No. Yeah. I would say they're staying in their lane. I'm just you totally threw me off my train of thought. I was trying to be serious. But yeah, so
It's a whole world.
absolutely.
It's a whole new world.
A whole new world. I've always wanted to pursue a music career. For all the people out there, I have a horrible voice. In the bathroom, I kind of sounds quite good. I'm gonna test it out one day, but we'll see.
Back to topic.
I just had to say that to put it out there.
But what's interesting is our second last guest, which is a podcast, and they got VC funding.
Yeah,
which is, it's not software, it's not hardware, it's a radio show.
So she got.
Is this Layla?
No. Kerning Cultures.
Hibba Fisher.
Hibba Fisher.
Oh,
so she's the first venture-backed podcast. She created the first venture-backed podcast network. So she has like 7 or 8 different podcasts.
Yeah.
They raised funding, I don't say like 2 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah. So and she's doing extremely. It's a beautiful thing. So Kerning Cultures, check it out. You'll catch it on the next episode. Where we got to speak to her. She's based in Seattle. Amazing thing. Hibba's superstar.
Mm-hmm.
Great conversation, man. She was really cool. She was
Amazing.
really cool.
Yeah.
So so she ended up getting a VC, but not from the region, right? So she had to go out to the States and get her money from there.
Yeah. Look, I mean, let's kind of just, put it out there in terms of, where VC money is around the world. So I always kind of talk about it, from the point of view of, what the region is versus, where the big behemoth is, which is the US.
Mm.
So the US, last year probably did somewhere in the range of about $130 billion worth of VC investment. Wow. And that's, let's call it, the US, 350 million people. our region, which is the MENA region, if you kind of go wider and you talk about Turkey and you include that into it, we're pretty close to 300 million people as well, maybe 250 or so.
Correct.
And the amount of venture investment that we did last year was probably closer to $900 million. So we are literally, less than 1% of what the US is. Now, I think the other thing we also have to, really take into consideration is that we're much younger in terms of the ecosystem that we have.
True.
So the US has, been doing this since the 90s.
Yeah.
That's the 1990s.
Just to put it out there, be clear about
Just to be clear about it. And, really in the region, we've been kind of at it, in a hard way, let's call it for the last, 5 years is kind of when we concentrate on it.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe the last 10 years, in total.
Do you think, sorry, I was just going to interrupt you on this, but do you think a lot of our money is going out to the US as well, right? So I think there's a lot of people that are just by default kind of channeling their money through there to go out rather than come and go through the trouble of trying to get things done here directly.
Yeah. I mean, it used to happen quite a bit more. I mean, it's starting to happen a little bit less. I mean, in our region, we've been traditional types of investors, We've all grown up who said, buy real estate,
Mm-hmm.
That's the thing that gives you the dividends, every month, every year, whatever it might be. Private equity is the same way because it's established businesses. So you get, a dividend check, once a quarter. And so now you got to walk into the family offices and, to the institutions and you say, give me some money and maybe I'll give you something back in about 5 years or so.
It's a tough sell.
And it's a tough sell.
Yeah.
But, we've had some really great exits in the region as well. So Kareem acquisition was great. Souk was great. Yeah. And now you're kind of getting that FOMO that's happening with some of the institutional investors. And they're saying, I wish I was that guy that did, 20x on my investment. Mm-hmm. And so, more money is starting to pour in. So it's something that I'm excited about for the region as well.
What's your take on crowdfunding?
So crowdfunding is, a great way to raise money. I mean, everybody needs different types of ways to raise money. Crowdfunding is one of those things that, the three of us can kind of do at any time. And the whole thing is about the power of the crowd. You need to get, hundreds of people to, give $5 each and, great, you've got a business to go. Where I think, crowdfunding falls a little bit is, one, the process to actually do it.
The time.
The time, the fact that you now have 100 people who are part of your investor list, that, who are, theoretically partners for you. I mean, that becomes a little bit challenging, but, you need different ways to raise money. I mean, sometimes you just can't through a VC, but, sometimes the power of the crowd is the thing that works for you.
I can't help but kind of maybe push you in a space. I don't know how familiar you are with it, but then with all of this funding, and we're talking about crowdfunding, it got me thinking about the crypto conversation as well, right? And smart contracts.
Yeah.
And I don't know, are you familiar in that space? Like, are you kind of...
So I'm going to stay in my own lane.
Okay, that's it. No, because
kudos to you.
Okay, I was going to give you a really difficult question about that and say, like, how do you see the evolution of crypto's involvement in VC, angels, investment as a whole? Because with smart contracts, I feel one of the advantages that's being offered is that it gives you a direct link. You don't need that institution to make the contract. You don't need to be concerned with all those, and you can go directly to the source. So essentially, it's a much more efficient crowdfunding kind of setup.
Yeah,
and I think it's going to raise some challenges, I feel, around the VC space and around the investment space. And I think it's definitely around the traditional banking space.
Yeah.
Where you don't need that middleman anymore, man. You don't need someone to hold your money.
So the only thing that I can probably talk about that is, what I'm doing with the current company that I'm at, which is called In Country. And so what we do is, it's called data residency as a service. What's happening is that, for the last, decade or so, everybody's been moving towards the cloud. And that's been a really great thing to do. It helps you to set up faster. It helps you to scale your product faster. It helps you to go into new regions better. And, probably one of the more important things is that, it puts cybersecurity, at the forefront of it as well. Yeah. So somebody's doing it on your behalf. And honestly, I feel much more comfortable having an Amazon or Microsoft, looking at my cybersecurity than, somebody trying to do it, out of their garage.
For sure.
So the only challenge that's now happening is that there's new data regulations that are coming out, in every part of the world.
GDPR.
So GDPR, we always heard about, the Great Firewall of China in terms of, data.
Yeah.
But, it's starting to come, across, Southeast Asia, and it's here in our region as well.
Mm-hmm.
So last year, the UAE passed a federal law, which basically said, health data needs to stay in the country. It needs to be stored here. They're doing something on payment side. Saudi's done something recently where, all citizen data needs to be stored locally. It's happening in Egypt. I mean, it's essentially happening in more than 80 countries around the world.
Across the board, essentially across the board. Me, in terms of the health space, I can tell you that's it. That trend that you just mentioned about wanting the health data to stay in country,
right,
is across the board. Like, we're seeing that everywhere.
Yeah, absolutely. And the reason why governments are doing it is because, you hear about these, these security breaches that are happening. The challenge is that, these clouds, or where the data is sitting, is not necessarily in your own country of residence.
Mm.
It's in, for example, AWS is in Bahrain. So that's underneath Bahraini law. And so, the challenge is how do you, take care of your own citizens' data?
Yeah.
And that's why they're saying, look, it needs to be on our soil. We want to be the ones that, kind of, control the way that people do, data security. We're the ones who are responsible for our own citizens as well.
Yeah.
And so the only thing I'll say on blockchain is that you're talking about a distributed network, and that distributed network is all over the world.
Yeah.
The challenge is that you have data regulations which don't allow you to move, people's data from one place to another.
Yeah.
So I think that's just one thing that, from my point of view, that blockchain, has a challenge.
A challenge, and that's it. I think it's just that it's kind of that thing of all or nothing. That's how I feel about certain elements of the blockchain concept, right? It's you either buy into the entire concept and you're willing to go down that infrastructure and take that infrastructure for what it is, right? Which is all the security and all the things that are available, but you have to just trust that structure and say that, okay, finish. It's borderless,
right?
And you just got to accept that, which I think is an evolution. Like, I think it will happen the same way that initially companies brought in that security on the data themselves and stored it in their home countries or wherever their companies originated from. Then companies such as yourself that you're representing right now that do it in country, to protect that. And then I think eventually the evolution will be like, okay, we finally feel comfort around this borderless space that's called, blockchains and that whole world. And then we're willing to go down that road because we feel it's 100% secure and 100%.
Yeah.
But yeah, wow, my mind just there's so much information. It's
mind blasting.
Yeah, I'm trying to
process it.
Yeah,
process it. Processes it. What about being in the VC world? Any interesting, any cool new ideas that you can share with us that you've been exposed to over pre-COVID, during COVID? Anything tech-wise that our listeners would be psyched to hear?
Look, I mean, for me, I spend a lot of my time on fintech specifically. So, what we're looking at is basically disrupting banks. And it's so interesting that, I was in banking for such a long time, and now I'm sitting on, a different side.
You're the Trojan.
Yeah, the Trojan horse, exactly.
And, I guess it's one of those things that might be a little bit cliched right now, which is, banks have spent a lot of time, holding our money, for a long time, but haven't really been able to give us, the service that we're now expecting.
True.
So maybe, call it 10 years ago, it was something that we would accept in terms of, walking into a bank, cashing checks, doing these kinds of things. And now it's just, we don't accept it anymore.
Yeah. I'm over that. I'm over that scene for sure.
Right.
I don't want to talk to anyone in a bank at all. Like, honestly, at all. Like, even when they do those promotions, don't call me. Guys, please don't call me. I'm not going to subscribe to whatever the payment plan where you're going to put off my IKEA thing that I bought for whatever, $100 and paid over 12 months. I'm not interested. Stop it. Okay. And I don't have no time to go into a bank at all and deal with a teller.
Yeah.
That's just.
Yeah. I'm going to leave the bank name nameless right now. But I was trying to open an account, which was my existing bank, which I've been banking with, for the last 8 years. And it took me a month and a half to open that bank account.
Unacceptable.
which is unacceptable. And this is after multiple calls and
so hey, do you want my money?
Exactly.
Like, I'm going to give you my
Exactly.
money.
Unacceptable.
Exactly.
Come back next month.
Exactly. Now that might have been a fringe case, but I mean, it does take a long time, to do things. I mean, there's always, somebody that you have to, go and, sign for. And especially with these COVID days, I mean, the last thing you want to do is kind of meet somebody that, you don't really know.
True.
So this is kind of where I spend, a lot of my time is, where are, the fintechs, going of the world.
Yeah.
We've had some really great challenger banks that are out there, the Revoluts, the Monzos. There's some that are, homegrown now that are trying to, access the market, which is really great.
Yeah.
One company that I can't remember the name of today, but they just, came out and they launched the product. And their product was, look, why do you even have to sign up for a bank? What is the purpose of a bank for you? So it's to really hold some money for you, but it's also to allow you to do some payments, receive your salary, and then that's kind of what you're doing with
transactions.
Online transactions. That's really what you're doing. And so they're saying, why even go for a challenger bank? Why even have like a wallet that sits on your bank account? Why not just interact with it in the way that you're currently interacting with your friends? And so they do it on either WhatsApp or MS Messenger or whatever other social media that you're currently on.
Mm-hmm.
That's where they operate. And they're basically saying, great, we'll receive the money from you. We'll offer you various different ways to spend that money, whether it's a Visa card or MasterCard, etc. And then go. There's no sign up process to it.
Interesting.
There's no.
So where is it centralized? Where would it be centralized as an institution where my money would be sitting with?
Well, that's the thing, is that it's not centralized anywhere. So yes, the corporate head office and where their bank license actually sits is in Estonia, I believe.
I was going to say like Estonia or Isle of Man or like some, one of these places.
Exactly. They do, because they are part of the EU, they'll still have,
regulations.
The regulations that are there for you. They'll still, need to abide by those things. And therefore you could feel some sort of comfort that, they're not going to walk away from you, with your money. But it's just a different concept of, reimagining what a bank, is and what it should be for you.
But by the way, it's not that far away from
WeChat?
The model exactly of WeChat, of China, right? Like,
did you hear about WhatsApp in Brazil?
Yeah, so they just initiated payments today.
You can make payments through WhatsApp in Brazil.
I'm telling you, WhatsApp is 5-7 years behind WeChat.
Way more.
Like WeChat, I was just talking, a friend of mine was here for my birthday, Darren. Shout out to Darren, what's up? So he came and he was telling me, like, it's reached a point now in Hong Kong where, number one, they won't even accept cash. Right. So it's just like, if you go to a place and you give them, you'd be like, what the hell are you doing? Right. And then he's like, even now, essentially the credit card, the physical credit card is obsolete. He's like, everything is WeChat. We just Uber, whatever, transactions, just instant kind of.
I saw a video 5 years ago, like a quick demo of WeChat and some of its capabilities. You can even do heat maps. So let's say you're going to a mall, Dubai Mall. Yeah. You open WeChat, you go through the mapping software that they have, and you see heat maps on how many people are inside that mall before you enter there. Yeah. And that's before COVID, before any of this. It recognizes how many users are using WeChat that are located in that area. Yeah. And it feeds you that information. So if you're planning to go to the mall, you're like, oh, it's busy. There's no need to go right now. I'm going to wait for it to die down before you actually go there. Yeah. So WeChat is obviously associated with WeBank. And that's kind of the thing that's behind it. So WeBank is only, let's call it, 7-8 years old now. Yeah. So it's only 7 or 8 years old. But by number of transactions globally, it is the 7th largest bank.
Yeah, I can believe that. Wow. I can believe that. I'm telling you, if every transaction is being done through them, right? So it's just that simple. The other thing about it is, you have to realize is how much technology they spend on WeChat. With the microservice that they have, with integrate, with allowing people to build apps on top of WeChat, etc. So WeChat, I mean, it was really interesting. We were talking to the CTO of WeChat, of WeBank, sorry. And he was telling me that he basically rebuilds his entire banking technology 3 times a year. What? And you have to imagine, you compare that to, some of the traditional banks, they've never rebuilt their technology. They're kind of, one acquisition on top of another. And that's why you get, the service where it takes,
45 days to open a bank account, or
He rebuilds. He doesn't update.
no, it's a completely rewrite.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason why you have to rewrite is because things are changing so fast in terms of the technology, but also things are changing in terms of what their focus is on. So one day it's on transactions, and then the next day they say, hey, look, why don't we do this small, savings account where people can invest? I'd love for what you guys need, by the way, on the show. You know what Joe Rogan has? They has this guy who basically pulls up information.
Pull it up. He's supposed to be
that guy.
Most useless.
When we conceived this show, I was supposed to be the young Jamie.
Listen, I'm looking
Shout out to Jamie.
I'm looking for a new co-host, guys. My young Jamie is not young Jamie.
Yeah, but young Jamie is not in front of the camera.
True. You got a little bit of personality.
We tried to do it. It's either being in it or not. I can't be sitting here Googling things unless I'm behind the camera. But yeah, we need that. And actually, funny you say that. I was watching a podcast yesterday.
Yeah.
It's different. Having that instant search and validation, it makes a big difference.
Right.
We've been talking about it. We've been talking about incorporating a monitor.
Right.
And then kind of doing it. But then the problem is that we're so against scripting. So you got us now going down a whole rabbit hole that we've been speaking about for a long time. Because ideally you'd be semi-prepped for such call outs. So you'd have a few things that you wanted to show.
Not these two guys.
We're like,
we're raw dogging
not
it.
The way that I thought the conversation was going.
We're raw dogging it 100%. We go commando.
We go commando. I like it. But yeah, so yeah, you were going to show us something ideally, but we don't have that platform here. Thank you for. We're like the traditional bank, right? And more developed podcasters are like WeChat. Okay, thanks for establishing.
Let me come back to you 45 days with the response.
You'll hear back from us. We may need you to come in and sign a few documents about your request. Yeah. So you were going to show us what were you going to?
What I was trying to remember what the number was is once they said, we're going to do this product that's going to help you do savings and investment into the market. And talking about, how much that they were able to accumulate, in just 30 days was probably the equivalent of, call it the number 5 bank in the US in terms of total assets. And they do that in 5 days because
in terms of how much cash came in because of this.
Of the assets underneath management. Because you have so many users who are on the platform. Again, it's the power of the crowd that, that makes it, really interesting for.
But what's interesting that when you're saying about that we bank,
we bank
when he rebuilds every three times every year,
right?
Forget the technology they're coming with. It's the mindset of his team, the workflow of having to reinvent themselves and being as efficient,
right?
The efficiency process of whatever project management model or process they're using. It has to be at the very front, cutting edge, in terms of organizational behavior and management and all of that.
And this is what's so important when you're doing something in tech is, to have the right culture that's in it. It's one of those things that you can't really put a monetary amount onto it. But if you don't have that right culture, it never works.
Yeah.
And this is what you find, as challenging with some of the existing banks who are trying to, become digital banks, but they're trying to do it, within the existing bank.
The archaic
and so
mentality.
Usually what happens is, you'll set up this, 5-man team, they'll go off, they'll come up with some ideas, and then they'll start, to interact with the old team. And they'll start talking to them about like why you can't do it this way and you need to come into this system.
I've always done it this way.
Change management
and that's why, you'll usually what you find is the people who do, digital transformation or some sort of transformation really well are guys who will actually take take that 5-man team and put them down the street. They won't even put them in the same building. They'll put them, completely down the street and they'll start, brand new.
Yeah.
Because that's the only way that you can kind of, reimagine, what it is to be an actual bank.
It's so because again, every time, as we're building the story, and in my mind, just so you guys know, like whenever we do the podcast, it's like a story that's being built. Every episode, every guest that we have is kind of like a layer, and it's just kind of adding, and it just kind of pulling it back towards the EV subject that we spoke about. And this is the problem with the incumbents, right? The incumbents, in order for them to break their existing infrastructure and workflow and thought process, and start to try to integrate
Right.
a totally new mindset and setup and
Control Alt Delete.
And this is why a lot of incumbents, when there is dramatic shift, end up just disappearing, right? Like they just cannot do it. People are just kind of holding on for dear life to stay relevant.
Right.
And I think it's cool because I kind of like, we have a theme to this whole story because we've seen the evolution of Khaled here, and through his experience, he went from being part of the structure, the man, and he's now come on the other side to help build and fuel original ideas, which is really cool.
So can I bring that back one more step as well?
Absolutely.
So in the same way, that companies need to rebuild and reinvent themselves. And the challenge that you have if you're doing it within, call it the old environment that you're in, is really the same thing, when we talk about, ourselves as, trying to, rebuild who we are, or, reimagine, what it is that we want to be, or trying to, refigure out, what our future plans are going to be. If I had, for example, when I left banking, there was a couple of people that I had to, kind of move away from as well, because they were also bankers, and they're kind of, trying to bring you back into, banking. And, it took a lot of time and effort to, find, I don't want to say new friends, but, you want to go out and speak to people, who have a completely different, point of view.
Absolutely.
And if I had probably stayed, with the same group of friends, I might have gone back, because, there was a couple of offers that I did get. And, a couple of months down the road, you got this newborn baby. You say, hey, maybe it's something that, I tried out, and, great. I can, at least I can say I could try. But it's sometimes taking that extra, time, for yourself to really go after what it is that you're looking for.
I admire your openness to change. The ability to kind of, think, okay, I'm sure you've thought of all the risks, all the potential hazards in front of you, newborn child coming on the way, changing a career, going into an area that's kind of out of your comfort zone. But it seemed that you were at peace in making that decision.
Yeah.
And
this is the story, the surface. I can tell you, I'm sure as hell.
Yeah.
Right. There's a lot of sleepless nights, a lot of stress, a lot of what the hell am I doing?
Oh, yeah.
And that's just the nature of those kind of decisions and those kind of like
but I think
mega shifts.
That's the common denominator, is that openness for change, to continue, grow and evolve and improve. And I think that's, some of my limitations, or, most people can relate, is that you get too comfortable.
Yeah.
And that kind of deviates you from, your target or where you want to go. And in the back of your head, that voice that you're listening to is not fear. It's just comfort. It's just I shouldn't do this.
Right.
But I think I kudos to you, man.
Thank
Awesome.
you, man.
No, super, super cool. I mean, by the way, I don't know about you guys, but every day when I'm brushing my teeth, I go on YouTube and I listen to those motivation stuff.
Yeah.
It's pretty amazing stuff out there, man. I'm telling you, like it kicks you in the ass in the morning, gets you thinking the right way.
Yeah.
And you just gotta push yourself, man. Like you just gotta get out the comfort zone.
It is. I challenge anybody to, with an open mind, listen to some of these motivational speakers, whoever it is. Any of those random videos that you're talking about YouTube, you feel your energy.
Right.
Of course.
Rise.
Right.
Of course.
Right. And it's having that want to improve yourself.
Right.
Giving you that push. I think everybody can make use of it.
Yeah. I think when I was going through it, for those couple of months where, I was doing that, trying to understand, what it is that I wanted to do, those motivational, videos, get you through the mornings.
Of course.
It really does. And it was really interesting because I have to say the motivational videos that I would listen to at that time was more about finding purpose.
Absolutely.
And now when I listen to those, I say, I don't really relate with those, because I found a purpose. And so now it's more about hunger. It's more about, what do you want to do to give back? How do you want to, kind of be remembered? Those are kinds of the things that spark me when I listen to motivational.
Because you're evolving. You're evolving.
Exactly.
No, but what a blessed, you've got to understand how blessed you are to be able to say that at least you know what you want to do.
Right.
Because I can tell you, 90, if not more, 95%
right.
of the world's population running around doing something they hate.
Yeah.
Just like, every day, like fuck,
Stuck in a rut.
I gotta go to work. Really?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then that check comes at the end of the month and kind of gives them a little bit of like a boost.
Yeah.
You know, just, enough to get them over the edge to kind of pull along. And then, man, that's just
But I mean, you know, Namir, I mean, you know, you've reinvented yourself a couple of times as well.
Absolutely. Different industries, different things. But that's just, for me, it was never it's hard to explain to people. It was never about trying to get into that mindset. It's just who I am. I have this weird, my wife would call it like overconfidence or being conceited, of this ability to believe in myself that there's nothing that's not learnable. There's no reason why Khaled does VC and I can't do VC. Like he's a human. You know, he learned it through reading or learning or some sort of, why can't I do that? And then I have confidence that I can be just as good or better. And that's how I looked at everything that I did. So oil and gas, then construction, then healthcare, then, you know, telecom, movie production, and just I've done all these sort of things because I've never felt a sort of like boundary or a ceiling. And I think that's something that people need to.
That's a great gift, by the way. I mean, not everybody has that in them. So but that's a great gift that you've been given.
Yeah, it's a gift of being, I guess, confident in yourself, but I don't think it's a gift in terms of learning. I don't think I have some sort of innate ability to learn better than people. I think it's just the willingness to put in the time and the effort and just to say, you know, I have that obsessive mentality, the same way with this goddamn podcast. We obsessed on this bitch till we brought it to fruition, right? Like I just obsessed on it.
And we continue to obsess.
Absolutely.
The other day I called him. I'm like, man, I haven't spoken to him for 2 days. And I'm like, you don't know what kind of rabbit hole I've gone into. He's like, what's going on? I'm like, you know that the last podcast you mentioned, like there's some echo in the sound. He's like, yeah. I'm like, it's fucking with my head. All I can hear is the goddamn echo. And he hears it. He's like, what are you talking about, man? It's not there. Like,
you just gotta let it go.
But yeah, you obsess about something to make it perfect, and it doesn't feel like work. I guarantee you, I've never been that obsessed about any job I've done. Yes, I enjoy what I'm doing. It's serving a purpose. I'm not solving world hunger. I'm not, you know, raising $1 billion for a company or an investor or whatever. But with doing this, I kind of get into it and it's like, shit, 4 hours just passed by and I'm still looking at the same thing and I'm not bothered by it.
By the way, I just want to check you on what you've just said in terms of not having an impact. And don't ever underestimate the impact that this platform.
I'm talking about my day job.
True.
That's what I was referring to. Yeah. Yeah, I should have clarified that a little bit more. I should have clarified it. But you know what I mean? Like it's you finish school, you go into the, you know, the working world and you're like, okay, yeah, I'm gonna, you know, execute this project and I'm gonna deliver on the deliverables and I'm gonna make the client happy. Yes, it feels good, it's great. But there's always part of you that, at least for me, I can say that because I never found my passion in that corporate environment. It's great, it serves a purpose. I'm learning, I am who I am today because of the experience I went through, but I can't see myself doing that for the rest of my life. You know, it's finding something like this where at this age in my life, in my, you know, I find that it's appealing to me. It's something that I'm learning, a new skill that I've not learned before. It's great. And I think it comes down to, I think, being open to change, challenging yourself, and then just fucking do it.
Execute.
Just do it.
Yeah. I always tell people now, like, but I've always been like that. Again, come talk about like weird things that I have abilities of is I don't mind doing something knowing about 60%. You know what I mean? Like, do you think you can be an MD of this company doing oil and gas? Yeah, I think I can do that. We'll give it a go.
Oil's in the ground. I take it out. I clean it up.
What do you mean?
Sell it.
It's black. You know, it's like a liquid. It fuels stuff. Greases up my door, stops from squeaking. I think I can sell it. I think I can figure it out. And that's it. But honestly, man, Khaled, really appreciate you coming. Honestly, I want you to know I'll be the first person to listen to your podcast when you do it. So Khaled told us before we started this thing that he's been thinking about doing it. We've been talking about this. We've ended on a good note. Yeah, just do it. Honestly. Just get up and do it. it's so good. It feels good to let it out.
Right.
So
I appreciate the time, guys. I mean,
Thank you for coming, man.
I love speaking with you guys. I mean, and the energy and passion that you guys have. Honestly,
Anytime.
Really great.
and you dropped some knowledge on us too.
Big time. Yeah.
Did some VC, some wizardry, like, you know what I mean? Give me your money kind of stuff.
I think the three of us need to start something together.
I'm done. Look,
hey,
I'm just going to put that out there.
By the
I
way,
think the three of us need to start
started off as
actually, really, it's the two of you that need to put something together. I mean, this podcast is wonderful, but I know between the two of you,
I think all three
I'll
of
back
us.
you.
That's it.
he said it, not me. He said it, not me.
You heard that? We got money. We got money coming in. I like it.
We're gonna have a monitor finally.
Exactly. Thank God we'll be able to pull things up. Guys, thank you for joining us again. As usual, I know you know what's funny is I know you guys even last till the end, and whoever lasts to the end usually audio, but I'm gonna say it anyways. Subscribe. If you hear us, pull off those headphones, walk to your laptop, turn on YouTube, subscribe, like, tell somebody that you think will actually like it as well.
Not
Show
only
us
that.
some love.
Not only that. If you have something to say it.
True.
Comment.
Exactly.
Tell us we're wrong. Put us in our lane.
By the way,
make it happen.
By the way, the 300 WhatsApps that I receive daily about what you guys want to tell, it's much more efficient if you do it online. It'll help our flow, our process. So yeah, please, like I said, subscribe, comment, love, like, tell people. We appreciate. Thanks a lot, man. That's it.
Thanks, bro.
Thanks
for
guys.
coming.
Appreciate it.